welcome. And today we're going to speak to Terry Lane Emberley, who is going to talk to us about how to activate and strengthen our pelvic floor muscles, and also link the pelvic floor activation to breath. So hello, Terry. Hi.
Hi, Carrie. Nice to see you again.
Yes, great. You're looking very well. And so I thought maybe we just start with a quick recap of why it's so important to look after your pelvic floor muscles. And then we can go on to these fantastic exercises that you're going to show us, which we can do anywhere, can't we? At a desk, on a bus, in bed. It's going to be something for everyone.
If you've just tuned in and you are, not lying in your bed or sitting on your sofa, yes, you can. You can do these exercises anywhere. You don't have to put your kit on. You can close your eyes, or you can keep your eyes open. So it's just something that you can do that no one else knows that you're doing, really. So and we should be regularly doing these exercises.
Brilliant. And why is it important to do these exercises again? I know obviously it helps with incontinence as we get older, but there's other reasons we should do it, isn't it?
Well, the muscles of the pelvic bowl do support lots of inner functions, yes, for men and for women, because we tend to think that these problems are all directed towards women, because women go through childbirth, birth and pregnancy. There probably is a little bit more, you hear about that a little bit more in women, but it can still affect men as well. So it is really important that we keep those muscles strong and active. You can overwork the muscles and they can be in a state of hypertrophy, which is just as dysfunctional as if they didn't work at all. So it's quite important that we direct some attention to our pelvic health, because it is an area that we tend to just forget about.
Absolutely, and so we start to have issues, of course. Great, so now we're going to learn how to do secret pelvic floor muscles that no one knows we're doing. Is that correct?
I like that. Secret pelvic floor exercises. I'd like to really just remind people, though, that if people are going through stress incontinence or urge incontinence, I have added some links, or you've added the links for me, that people can get clued up a little bit more on what those terms mean and what's really going on, because you need these exercises to keep your pelvic health, good, and keep your muscles strong. But sometimes there's something more sinister going on, or there's something else going on. So if you had a prolapse, for instance, or there may be a tumour in that area, there could be other reasons why you're struggling to remain continent. So it's very important that if you're concerned at all, that you go and visit your GP and just get a proper check and find out, is it just that you need to do exercises? Because I can help you with that, but anything else, obviously you need to make sure that your GP has checked you over first of all.
Absolutely, we definitely need to do that. Okay, so Terry, let's get started with our first exercise, please.
Okay, so I'm going to lead you first of all. So if you are in a situation where you can sit down, obviously if you're driving, please don't do that. But if you are able to close your eyes, it will just help you. I'm going to take you through a little bit of visualization, which can help you. There is also another link, I believe, to a YouTube clip about the diaphragm. So if you don't know what the diaphragm looks like, it will help you to have a little look at that clip first. So I'm just going to ask you, if you can, to close your eyes and just to settle yourself down. So it doesn't matter what position you're in, you don't have to be lying down, you can be seated. So choose a position that's comfortable for you, where you can just focus for a moment on your breath. So I'm going to ask you first of all to just notice what's happening with your breath. Is your breath deep? Is it shallow? Is it fast? Is it slow? Don't try and change it, just notice it to start with. And then if you can, I'm going to ask you to put one hand on your chest and your other hand on your belly, down on your lower abdomen. And then just notice your breath now. So is your chest rising? Are your ribs expanding? If they're not, then let's see if we can get that breath to go a little bit deeper. And effectively, we really want to feel the belly expanding as well. So it used to be when someone took your photo, they'd say breathe in, which would then direct you to take a breath in, but also to hold your belly in. But actually, the anatomy is directing you to do the opposite. So in order to be able to inflate your lungs, your ribs need to expand, your diaphragm, which is the flat muscle that I was talking about before, needs to drop down. And also your muscles in your pelvic bowl will slightly relax and drop down. And your belly will expand. And all of that will happen on your in-breath. You've probably taken several dozen in-breaths as I've been explaining that to you, but start to notice what's going on there. So continue to breathe, let your breath go deeper and deeper, and start to feel the expansion in your belly, and know that your diaphragm is going down, and all of that expansion and that relaxation in the muscles needs to occur. So just continue taking some breaths and just allow those muscles to relax more and more. Okay, so let's just start to take notice more to our out breath. So when we breathe out, naturally the lungs are going to deflate, so the rib cage will come back in. And that's the moment when the diaphragm domes slightly back up. And ideally, what we want to happen is for the muscles in the pelvic bowl also to lift up. So those muscles need to mimic the diaphragm, which is why the diaphragm is such an important muscle in the breath. So now I'm going to ask you to physically lift up your pelvic floor. Now, if you really are thinking, I'm not sure if I am contracting the right muscles, those are the muscles that you use naturally to stop yourself from peeing. Okay, so if you're doing that now, I want you to know that those are the correct muscles that you're lifting up. So we're going to try and think about the muscles at the back passage first of all, and then gradually, progressively lift that contraction forwards and upwards. And I like to think of it as going up an escalator. If you were to step in the back door of the shopping centre and ride the escalator up to the top, that is your natural slow progression of your contraction in your pelvic floor. And then when you breathe in again, you can slowly ride that contraction back down. So just do that for a few breaths. So the in breath is everything expanding, all of the muscles relaxing, and you're going down the escalator. And then when you breathe out, step onto the escalator and start to bring that contraction back up. So by now you should be doing or finding that muscle. Now, while you continue to do that, I am just going to say some people don't find that muscle, and it may be that muscle hasn't been used for a long time, and you are thinking, I can't find it, I'm doing the clenching thing, but I can't feel anything. And what I would say, if you have had a check by your doctor, is that if you continue to go through this practice, you will eventually make that link from the brain through your neuro pathways to that muscle. And it is literally just because that muscle isn't strong enough.
What about if you know, I know an old exercise was to actually stop yourself peeing and stop. Do they advocate that anymore? Or is it worth trying it that way or not really?
They don't consider that to be a very healthy way to work the pelvic floor, because it isn't good. It's not very good for your bladder, Kerry. No. But what they are asking you to do, I think, is that they're using that to help you identify that you are contracting the right muscles. Right. So sometimes when you're weeing, you can try and contract that muscle, but the wee will still carry on, and that just shows a level of weakness in the muscle. That's all. Mm-hmm. So sometimes you won't feel it at all, but that's usually, like I say, if you've got quite weak muscles. So you would just continue to do that. So I'd like to continue with the exercise. So I've taken quite a long detailed explanation over the first part. So let's just close our eyes and go back into that exercise now. Now that we're kind of starting to work out where we are, like any other muscle, this muscle will fatigue. So you are asked to do this muscle until you fatigue. So if you're able to feel the muscle contracting and you're going through the in-breath where you're releasing it, and then the out-breath where you're contracting it and riding up to the top, just continue to do a few of those. And you can imagine how, even if you've got quite a strong connection there at the moment, how if you continue to do this, the muscle would fatigue and eventually stop working. What I also want you to start to identify as well is that when you get to the top of your escalator, can you feel another muscle above the pubic bone? Can you feel another muscle start to fire up? Again, don't worry if you can't, but eventually you will. And that muscle is your transverse abdominis muscle. So that is your deepest core abdominal muscle. So it wraps around, just like it says in the name. Transverse abdominis acts like a corset. So working that muscle alongside the pelvic floor, and it has to be the pelvic lift first, then you can contract that muscle by putting the belly button back. You are then really locking in your whole core section. And that will really work to reinforce and support the inner functions of those inner organs and to support those inner organs. So if we continue a little bit further down the exercise route, so now that you've had all of our explanation, you're going to continue slowly still. And as we work slowly in this way, we are working the slow twitch fibers in the muscle, and those muscles are for endurance. So when we contract slowly and gradually and progressively, it's the slow twitch fibers. It's about endurance. Okay, so it's about longevity. So we're just going to do those exercises, do a few more. Now, it's hard to tell as an instructor if people that you are talking to are fatiguing and not doing it anymore, or if they're still doing it for, still carrying on, thinking, yes, I'm going strong. So I'm just going to ask you to stop now for a moment, and I'm going to give you an exercise to work the fast twitch fibers. So the fast twitch fibers are those quick reaction fibers. So you hear people talk about coughing, sneezing, laughing, and then suddenly maybe having a little bit of leakage. And that's because the fast twitch fibers aren't working effectively. So just like we worked the slow twitch fibers in a slow gradual progression, we're going to do some short, sharp snatches of contraction. So when we breathe here, we need to still get a nice deep breath in. So I'll take a nice deep breath in here. And then you're going to do a series of short, sharp contractions. And these ones will fatigue a lot quicker. You'll suddenly find that you lose coordination and you suddenly can't really, you're struggling to do it. So just do as many as you can on the out breath. Stop and take a nice deep breath in. And then let's do that again. So as you breathe out, think about that transverse abdominis. So think about lifting, pulling back through that belly button as well, if you can. If you haven't done these exercises before, or you haven't done them for a long period of time, it will take a bit of practice. So don't feel disheartened if you're thinking, I can't really quite do what Terry's asking me to do for very long, or I can't get my coordination right. Keep practicing and you will become an expert. So let's go to the third level. What I'm going to get you to do now is I'm going to get you to go back to doing the slow twitch endurance exercises. But instead of when you breathe in, letting everything expand, we're going to continue to hold a level of contraction. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So I'll talk you through. So we'll take a nice deep breath in to prepare. Let everything expand. As you breathe out now, we're going to slowly and gradually ride up that escalator to the top. Hopefully we'll feel something firing up in the lower abdominal section so we can pull our belly button back. And then now when we go to breathe in again, let's just see if we can keep that contraction on. So just take a few breaths. and see how many breaths you can do. See if you can do a minimum of 3. And then you might find that it releases naturally. Now already I can feel all of my abdominal muscles really firing up, and it's because we've done quite a few exercises. If you're not feeling that way, again, please don't feel disheartened, just continue to practice. So going back into that again, we're going to add on our short, sharp contractions. So instead of doing it separately, we're going to do the short, sharp contractions on top of our already contracted muscles. So does that make sense? Because I know that sometimes I explain things and I think that doesn't make any sense at all. So anyway, let's prepare. So let's just do it. So close your eyes if it helps. Nice deep breath in, let the expansion occur. As you exhale, ride that escalator up to the top. When you get to the top, pull the belly button back. Continue to breathe without releasing that contraction. And on the next exhalation, see if you can do some short, sharp contractions on top of that already established contraction that you've got going on. How does that feel?
Faces. Do people pull faces?
That's why it's good to close your eyes.
Yeah, no one's looking at me.
You can take yourself away. Yeah, there's a theory that if you close your eyes, no one can see you. Okay, so that is kind of a basic overview. It may sound a little bit complex, but I think that once you've done it a few times, it becomes quite a simple thing to do. So if you start with the breath, start to imagine the diaphragm going up and down. So that attaches all the way around the base of the rib cage. So it's quite flat, or it domes slightly, but it domes up more on the out breath, which is why the lungs will deflate. You know, if you think about the in breath, everything inflates, doesn't it? So there's no space for you to bend forward or to do much else other than to allow that expansion. So when you breathe out, the lungs deflate, the rib cage comes back in, the diaphragm lifts up. That's when you want the muscles of the pelvic bowl also to lift up. So if you think about that out breath being the activating breath, if you go to the gym or you do any exercise with any instructor, you'll very often hear the instructor say, do make the effort of the exercise on the out breath. But they don't always tell you why that is. And it's because when you're breathing out, you need to stabilize through the pelvic floor and the core by pulling your transverse abdominis back. And it's because if you do exercises, so let's use crunchies or sit-ups as an example, when you do that exercise, there's a great deal of pressure bearing down through the pelvic bowl and through past those muscles. So if you don't brace them or contract them or stabilize them, then you're going to weaken them. So that's the idea of exercise, breathing out on the effort. It's because you need to stabilize yourself, and stabilizing yourself means lifting the pelvic floor muscles, pulling back the transverse abdominis muscle, which effectively is the one that gives you the flat tummy, and that supports the inner organs and supports the inner function of the organs.
Fantastic. That sounds very exciting. And how often should we be doing these exercises then, do you reckon?
Well, I would say definitely last thing at night when you get into bed, and first thing in the morning when you wake up, because you're in an ideal position then lying in the bed. If you just put your feet on the bed and allow your knees to come up, you can put your hand on your belly and you can just close your eyes and you can just focus on that breathing, because the breathing is a key part. You know, we know that breath is going to occur because it's an involuntary action of the body, but if we're not being mindful of it, it's often quite shallow. So in order for it to really effectively be able to uptake as much oxygen as possible for the body to utilize it and to be able to make those contractions occur, we want to be mindful about our breathing. Think about breathing deeply down into the lungs, letting everything expand, and then just making that contraction. And if you do it first thing in the morning, do it last thing at night. At some point, it's a bonus then if you can do it at some point in the middle of the day. So ideally 3 times would be great. as a starting point. And then once you make that connection, because it really is about making a connection from the thought process in the brain, and it's a neuro pathway. So we've talked about that before in the last clip that we did. Muscle connection is about making that connection from the brain. So that's why it's so effective to really visualize the area or think about the area that you want to work. And it helps you make that connection. So if you walk through the pathway in the woods the first time, you might need a machete to create some kind of a pathway for you to make it through. But once you've been through there several times, as you walk through the woods normally, you follow a path where it's already been worn away. That's the best way to think of a neuro pathway. And that is what will happen. I promise anyone who starts these exercises and is thinking, I really can't feel anything, please continue with it, because as long as you've had your check from your doctor, you will eventually make that connection, and you will just get stronger and stronger and stronger, and you'll be at the traffic lights, you'll be talking to people, you'll be doing all sorts of stuff, and you'll be doing your little pelvic floor exercises a lot of the time without even really being conscious. So good luck, everybody. Please do it. Please try and do it.
Yes, no, definitely. That's fantastic. Thank you so much for that, Terry. And please check out the links below. There's more information on the pelvic floor muscle exercises, and also how it links to the diaphragm, and also some information from the National Health Service, what things you should be looking out for if you have got any issues. Okay, so I look forward to seeing you next time with some more exciting tips on how to keep fit, Terry. Yeah, thank you.
Hopefully I'll see you soon. Bye.